Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, your niche navigator, coming to you live with another episode of Munira's Musings. Our guest today is LaChelle Adkins. Hi, LaChelle. Welcome.
Hi, Munira. So good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. So LaChelle here is America's Supermom. I want to know what makes her a supermom and where she got the cape from, because I want that cape. We'll see if I want the cape.
Okay.
But we just want to share a little bit about me. I am your niche navigator, and I help businesspreneurs find their niche, navigate to their niche, because most times we are given a business proposition and we start a business not exactly knowing who to serve, how to serve, why to serve them. And I help answer all those questions for you. So without further ado, let's get to business.
Awesome. I was just sharing it out on my page.
Awesome.
Find to multitask, okay?
Yes. So LaChelle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, I am LaChelle Adkins, as she said earlier, otherwise known as America's Supermom. My husband and I have 15 children. And right now, currently, we have 10 of those children still living at home, and 8 of them are doing e-learning. My story is I was raised an only child. So that adjustment with going from being an only child to having a house full of people, the responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, just sharing your attention and time, it was a struggle for me. So for 13 years, I struggled with depression and anxiety. I was hospitalized 3 times for this because my mom came from a big family. And so she just wanted one child that she can just pour attention into. But education was really her outlet for leaving the humble beginnings of her childhood. So she really impressed that on me. And I was a very high achiever. I was always seeking validation for rewards and accolades with, being on honor roll, gifted classes, things like that. So to try to assimilate those type of ideals and aspirations with a dynamic of a large family when there are so many elements that are outside of your control was really a recipe for disaster in my own life. So struggled with that depression, was hospitalized 3 times. After my 3rd hospitalization, I really looked inward and recognized the patterns that I was creating for myself, because during that 13-year span, I really looked out and blamed a lot of people, my husband, my kids, circumstances, and I really didn't take that personal accountability for what I was doing because I was the common denominator, so I always joke now, it's like I blame my kids, but some of my kids weren't even born during the time that some of this stuff was happening, right? So it was this process of going inward that I created a strategy that I call Fresh Start. And it's an acronym of 5 pillars that helped me overcome my depression, but maintain a life that was depression free. So during this pandemic, I saw that was something that I did after the depression. But I had so many people that I helped during the transition, moms who were working from home and their kids were doing e-learning, that I wanted something proactive that people could do to check in with themselves daily. So I started a Smile for Wellness movement. And SMILE is also an acronym of 5 key areas that we need to check in with every day to ensure that we are making sure that we are taking care of our mental health and wellness.
So amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. So tell me, do you have twins, triplets?
No twins, all single births. So I personally had 13, and then 2 of the children are my stepchildren.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So this was by choice? The
Yes,
reason
it's so
I asked,
crazy. I know it's crazy because we wanted 5 when we first got married, and we end up, tripling that to be at 15. I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know what happened. It's kind of a blur.
no, hey, you know what? When you're having fun, life
Right,
becomes a blur. So
right.
that's perfect. That's not, I mean, nothing condescending, but when I got married when I was 15,
Yeah,
my job was to produce a son, right?
right.
So 3 daughters later, I have a son, right?
Mhm.
And then it was it. I was done with kids. I,
Right.
like you, I was also in a mental capacity because I wasn't ready. I was very young. I took care of the household, something that I'd never done before in another country, in another family. And I didn't have support system and
Mhm.
it drove me nuts.
Mhm.
But then one thing happened to me and I decided that I wasn't going to live for anything else. I was going to live for my kids. And that changed the whole dynamic for me.
Mhm.
So that was my story. But this
Mhm.
is because we're here for you. So I don't want to get into my story. But as mothers, we tend to focus on everything else except yourself, right?
So
So I
true.
like the fact that you have created these acronyms and self-check systems. And the
Mhm.
fact that you realize that you were the common denominator in all of the issues that were happening.
Mhm.
And that happens, right? When I had my third daughter, she was hardly 2 pounds. She was this small,
Oh,
like a
wow.
spring chicken.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I would just cry because I didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And so for 4 years, I held her on my back, just carried her on my back because it would be the only way she would find solace, and it would keep my head calm because she wouldn't stop crying. But
Wow.
that's another
Yeah.
story. But the thing is, you have to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're America's Supermom. How did you give yourself this title?
Well, we have been in the media on different occasions. We were on the Rachel Ray Show, which is a national syndicated show. Then we also were covered in different news media outlets because our family was so big. So with my 14th and 15th delivery, we had just kind of received this notoriety from the local news here in Atlanta, and they said Supermom as the title for the story that they shared about us expecting our 15th child, I think at the time. And I just said, hey, I was working with the business coach who she actually was in the UK, and she just could not believe how many children I had and, my story. So she said, you're America's Supermom. So that's kind of how the name came about.
That's awesome. Right.
Yeah.
So,
But it was
tell
the
me-
idea really of, to me, embracing being a mom. Because for me, I wore a lot of masks trying to compartmentalize my life. My husband is also a pastor. He was an officer in the military. Then I had the issues of being PTO mom and soccer mom for extracurricular things with the kids. And every area I felt like I was a different person, if that makes sense. And so I wanted to be able to bring everything together and be one complete person. And so that's how I came up with the name.
so how old are your children? Yeah. So how old is the oldest one and the youngest one?
The oldest is 30 and the youngest is 6.
Awesome. All right. What a blessing. What a blessing.
9 girls and 6 boys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Woohoo, women power. Okay. So let's talk about you said you were wearing different hats, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
How did you manage all this? Because I know each one is in a different phase in their life. Right
Right.
now during pandemic, schools are closed, you're doing everything. And
Mhm.
there's e-learning, so you have 15 computers going.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you live in a mansion or, a palace or whatever.
Oh, hey, you make it work. Yeah, look, a palace can be, a backseat of a car if you're setting it up right, okay?
Okay. No, I believe you. I believe you.
You got to use imagination. I do. The one good thing is that I have kids, so I can pretend a lot of stuff with them and they don't know the difference, right?
Don't tell them that.
Right. No, but we're fortunate. We live kind of rural. We're close to the city, but a little further out. We have almost 10 acres. So we have a lot of land where the kids could spread out, go outside, which is an ideal scenario when they want to be inside and play video games all the time. So, let's just keep it real about that. But very modest home. I think we have like 7 bedrooms, but our kids share rooms. So we have them share rooms. They've got bunk beds, that type of thing. It's so funny because kids say, I want my own room, but then, they are always hanging out in each other's rooms or, making pallets in the living room, falling asleep watching movies. So they like being together, but then they kind of want their own space. But yes, so they share rooms. So that's the dynamic with that. I have learned really to embrace them as they are. So I've recognized that, I was a victim in my situation and I took accountability for the things that I did that led me to that path that I was in. However, during my own journey of healing, I've learned that my children were victims also. So for me, it's important for them to have that ability to be individuals and not for me to be so corporate minded. Because when I was struggling with depression, my husband worked all the time. He was in retail, he was in the military, and he was gone for weekends, holidays, and things like that. So I was always kind of like, um, drill sergeant type, staying very robotic about things having to be done. And I just really didn't have the space to kind of look at my kids as individuals. And some of them have suffered because of that. I have a couple of them that have anxiety and depression because they didn't really get that individual time. I was so busy being worried about the group. Even though we do have things set in place, routines that we do for their birthdays and, well, traditions, so to speak, that allow them that one-on-one time, but it's still an issue of most of my view was corporate more so than individual.
So did you come from a corporate world that this thinking was as such yours?
Well, see, being an only child, I just thought, hey, my best adjustment from being an individual to thinking about a group is, hey, let's see what's best for the team or the group, so to speak.
I
And
see.
so I really didn't know how that was going to work out. That was the thing, is to figure out, making meals and buying clothes and setting up systems for organizations. So a lot of those things on the outside, I was able to come up with a system that worked for us on a regular basis. The kids were always on time to school for the most part. They knew where all their book supplies were. We didn't have issues where, somebody didn't have their book bag. I mean, it happens every once in a while, but, we didn't have last minute stuff where they're, oh, I need a poster board for a project tomorrow. I was very clear about allowing them the autonomy and the responsibility to be proactive with their own education. Because that was the thing I was raised with. That education piece, I had that down. But it was the other areas that I didn't necessarily know, that I was just, doing the best I could. And it may not have been the best system, but I was always looking for something that worked and trying to continue to fine tune it from there.
So all the women that are listening want to know, when did this shift happen?
After my last hospitalization. So before, I would say I was very focused on the common group of everybody, looking a certain way. It's like, oh, don't do these things, guys, because, you're representing the family. And as an Atkins, we don't do those type of things. And I rarely even talk about that today because I feel like it's a lot of unnecessary pressure. I want my kids to be able to be expressive in who they are and learn while they are at home rather than walking around like 10 soldiers and not being able to enjoy life. And then allowing them the freedom to see that, okay, you might have made a mistake, you might have fallen. I'm here to help you get up. However, the consequence is yours because you chose to do whatever you did that was good or bad or whatever the situation is. But it's only because of my own journey that I feel that I have the space to be able to do that, because before I wasn't that way.
So you were able to self-analyze and use the same system now with your children where you help them self-analyze good or bad behavior.
Exactly.
So they know what inside the truth or how they have to this thing. You sound like the father from Leave It to Beaver. Okay, what do you think?
I did used to watch Leave It to Beaver, by the way. So, hey, some of him might have rubbed off on me, okay?
No, but the thing is, the way you say it, because here's the thing. Every morning at 6:30, when I switch channels and I don't want to hear the news, I go there sometimes and I listen.
Right.
Now, I don't always watch that, but it's always the decisions the child has to make, and they allow them to self-analyze. Now, parenting is a little bit different, but it's not all that different. It's just the style has changed a little bit now in the age compared to Leave It to Beaver, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you talk about courage. Every woman out there who has their first baby is courageous. So I commend those women who had the babies. Mm-hmm. And this has been a long, it's been a generational thing for years and years and years where women have had babies. Mm-hmm. What advice do you give to women who are having kids, who have had kids, just courage advice?
Yeah, so the first thing is really to be sure about your identity. My story begins with my oldest daughter. I had her with my husband before we were married out of wedlock. And it was a struggle because my mom, I met my husband in college. So I was on this college road to getting the right job, getting your degree and that type of thing. And I met my husband. He already had a son, and his son's mom and him never married. And so my mom had the mindset that, oh, this person is not the one for you. He's already got a child and all this. And she just thought this was a detour that would really impact the rest of my life in a negative way.
So she was afraid that he would derail you from your path.
Exactly. And so for me, I really had to be sure, within my own self, why I wanted to pick up the mantle with motherhood. Now, she wasn't planned in the way that we received her out. However, we wanted to get married, but our plan was to get married after I got my degree because he had already had his. And things turned out differently. So we went through a period during my pregnancy where we just kind of went our separate ways. We really wanted to be sure that this was what we wanted. We didn't want to just make a decision because we had a child involved. But during that time, it was a lot of, talking about me behind my back and people saying things because it's like, her whole life was ahead of her and now she's got this baby and I wonder what's going to happen next. And in my family, I was another first generation, so to speak, graduating from college. And so a lot of my cousins looked up to me and they're like, man, what's going to happen now? This is Miss Goody Two Shoe. And so what is life going to be like for her? So I think to be courageous is to decide, what works for you. And, in transparency, my mom was even willing to say, hey, we might want to look at other avenues if you feel like you're not ready to be a mom. And I had to stand up for what I believe was right. And I think that was a pivotal point in my life because that just wasn't in alignment with me, so I had to have the courage to stand up with my mom. And being an only child, we were very close. It really had an impact on the relationship for some years, and now we've healed from it. But it was really a bad space, for a long time. And she's always been there, supported me with every delivery. But we went through a period where every pregnancy for like up until my 7th pregnancy, she would go through a period of mourning because her mom had 11 other children outside of her, and she saw her parents get a divorce. So she just had this idea that the same thing was going to happen to me. And so it was just, she couldn't get that out of her head, and it affected our relationship. So I would say knowing what you're getting into and having a clear mindset of what motherhood means to you is very important when it comes to tackling that new beginning and new role as a parent with a child.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing because, most women like the idea of being pregnant and having a child, but they haven't yet self-analyzed the fact that what you just talked about.
Yeah.
And so what do you do now, LaChelle? I know you helped me a lot, but what is it that you do?
I love being around positive people. It's so funny. I'll just tell this quick story. Last week, I got a message through Messenger, and one of my connections said, how are you today? How are things going with Sally? And I just racked my brain, and I was thinking, Sally, did I have somebody? I'm looking at my calendar, trying to figure out, did I miss an appointment? Is it somebody I was supposed to make an introduction for? And I wrote him back and I said, who is Sally? And so she said, the hurricane. And I said, now, I don't watch the news. So I am racking my brain thinking it's a real person we're talking about. And she's talking about the hurricane. But I say that story because that is really what my life is like. I choose to be in this bubble of positivity. And it does take some work. My husband watches the news. I don't. I just really have a space to where I'm able to hear about the news after it's been filtered, so to speak. Because it used to be for me, this was one of the first things I did after my 3rd hospitalization was cut out the news. Stop watching TV because it really had an impact on me. I would get out of bed. I would feel so positive. And then after 15 minutes of watching the news, my whole attitude would change. And I really was able to pinpoint that just was not serving me. So now I have to be intentional about the people I spend my time with, the things that I listen to, music, everything, what I read, podcasts. So and then having so many people in my home who they see me the way I used to be. Now they do notice the differences, don't get me wrong. But for 46 years, that was the period that I was on this cycle of doing what they were used to me doing, people pleasing and, always concerned about what everybody else was thinking, the validation, all these type of things. They see me as that sometimes. And I just have to continue to remind them I'm not that person. But what keeps me upbeat to do that is to surround myself with positive people and stay engaged with that, and then give them the space to be who they are and not be nagging them saying, hey, I'm a new person. Why don't you go and do this? And, you need to improve in this area. I don't do any of that. I just let them be them. And then they come and ask me things. Mom, how are you doing? Whatever. And I think that's a lot more impactful than me behind them like a taskmaster trying to tell them what to do.
Awesome. I love the fact that you've grown your family this way, and it's amazing, right? I look forward to seeing the future because, your family is going to grow so well, and I can just see you surrounded with so many grandchildren, right? It's a blessing. It is,
Yes.
And
Yes.
the fact that so many people in this day and age don't feel they stop at 1, they stop at 2, and
Yes.
I stopped at 4, but I had my reasons. But
Mhm.
you know what? You do what's right for you, and you for me, you are a courageous woman because wow, you did what I couldn't do. So
Oh,
you are
thank you.
courageous, and the fact that you are there for people like me because I learn a lot from you, and I know you have a podcast. So give us a short spill about that.
Yeah, so the podcast, I had that for some time, but I started a series I call Corona Chronicles during the pandemic because I wanted a positive outlet. I felt that I was definitely locking myself inside. We had our kids quarantined very non-traditionally. We didn't allow any friends over. They didn't go places. We were very strict about maintaining that level of quarantine because we have so many people in the household. So during quarantine, there was as many as 13 of our 15 children that stayed here just because everybody was in a state of fear. They didn't know what it was going to look like, how long it was going to last. So everybody just kind of hunkered down at home. But I think it's just the whole thing of recognizing that, we have the power to choose how we decide to look at life. And that was one of the things that I was so busy being on autopilot with that I didn't recognize that I was choosing the things that I chose, which led to the decisions and what came about based on the actions that I took. So I decided during that time that, it's important to be positive. We had to be positive in our own household because we weren't getting out doing too much. So it was funny. My kids came up with different skills. They taught themselves so many new things. They wrote music. They did talent shows. I mean, it was just nonstop, the creativity that was spawned as a result of us being together. And one of those things was my podcast to be able to help entrepreneurs and just people in general have hope and have a perspective past this pandemic because every day seemed like an eternity and then every day seemed like it was the same at the same time. I didn't leave my calendar didn't leave my desk because every day looked the same and I would get confused. There wasn't the usual, oh, it's the weekend or Sunday we go to church and do something different. Every day was the same. So the podcast kind of came to life during that time. And so now I just enjoy to have anybody come forward if they have any insight they want to share, because my journey is one of evolution and I desire every day to be a better version of myself. And so I know that that takes practice. And so I enjoy having people from different walks of life come and share their story. Here's my grandson. He just say hi, Adam.
Adam, hey.
He's eating a donut.
Oh, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to start a morning.
Yes, I'll let him eat one for me because I don't need it, right?
Yes. So, you have been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, your strength, your courage, and your story because, it's one of courage. And the fact that you have grown in your own space, and the fact is that you took your mess and it became a message, right? That's what my coaches says, that everybody has a mess.
So true.
How they take it and transform it into a message is a different thing. So let's do that, all of you. And, take inspiration from America Supermom, because she's done it. We all can too. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It's Monday. And you know what? Everybody else, if you are joining us, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because there's going to be another guest next Monday with motivation and advice.
And one thing, I would like to add before we close is I am so inspired by you and your story. We met a year ago, I believe. It was on my journey of one of my first guests with doing my Facebook Lives when I started on Facebook. And your story back then really inspired me, and the things that you had to deal with your husband at the time. And again, I'm sorry for your loss with that, but the fact that here you are now and still focused on what it is that you desire to do, and you're not letting anything stop you, and continuing to stay relevant. You and I have these conversations about the new tools and technology that comes out, and we help each other. But I just say, you are a person of courage as well, because what you have had to endure in a short amount of time, and dealing with the global pandemic also, that is something to be recognized and noted. And I just want to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. And I am just really honored to know you, and look forward to many great things ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot. Well, everybody, this is a touchy-feely day today. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.